seen near our oceans.
Ian, what the is that?
So stay with me, because these are some of the most disturbing UFO sightings ever recorded. Early one morning off the coast of Los Angeles, a glowing saucer-shaped craft was recorded hovering just above the shoreline. The extraterrestrial craft looked smooth and perfectly round, almost like a classic flying saucer seen in old sightings.
Ian, what the is that?
It held the same height while drifting slowly along the coast. The craft continued gliding quietly along the shoreline, maintaining the same calm movement and steady glow as it traveled across the open water.
Holy
Hilltop saucers. Tourists, filming the hills near the Salmon River in Idaho, captured something unexpected in the sky above. Several metallic flying saucers suddenly appeared from behind the hilltops and moved into the open air. Their smooth, round surfaces reflected flashes of sunlight as they shifted direction. The craft circled briefly above the hills while maintaining the same distance from each other, almost like a small fleet traveling together. The coordinated movement made the scene look less like random debris and more like controlled flight. The group of saucers continued crossing the open sky while the tourists kept their cameras focused upward. Lake Dome. Three friends were skipping rocks along the shore of Lake Huancacocha, a quiet lake between mountains in Peru. A fourth friend was filming them from a few steps away. While recording, the camera suddenly turned upward toward the sky. A dome-shaped object was moving quickly across the sky. The UFO looked smooth and round from below. It slowed down and stayed above the lake for a short moment. Then it picked up speed again and moved away across the sky, becoming smaller as it went farther from the mountains. Crash scene. Old footage recorded in 2002 shows a strange scene in an open field at night. A dome-shaped craft sits on the ground with smoke rising from one side. The metal surface looks damaged and darkened. Near the opening of the craft, a thin figure can be seen moving slowly across the ground. The shape appeared alienoid, but with long arms and uneven movement. The camera stays at a distance while the figure pulls itself away from the craft and toward nearby bushes. This video looked so convincing that I started believing in aliens after watching it. What about you? Hawaii beach retrieval. Early one morning in Hawaii, something unusual was found on a quiet stretch of beach. A small metallic disc-shaped object was lying flat on the sand. Reports had come in during the night about something falling from the sky. By sunrise, officials were already there. Several men wearing protective suits stepped out of vehicles and walked straight toward the object. They examined its surface, lifted it carefully, loaded it into a vehicle, and drove away from the area. Maybe to a secret facility, who knows? Fast light. During an early morning walk along the beach in Wimereux, France, a man noticed a small bright light moving low over the water. It was close to the surface and moving very quickly across the sea. He grabbed his phone and started recording while the glowing orb continued forward in a straight line. The light stayed just above the water as it moved across the open area. For a moment it became brighter, then dim again while still moving. The man kept filming from the shore until the glowing object reached the far distance over the ocean and slowly faded from view. Ground discovery. These tall, pale figures with unusual head shapes were seen moving across a remote island when a tourist nearby began recording. He was watching the strangely tall creatures from a distance, thus managed to record only brief movements. When the footage reached the officials, they debunked it as usual, but the alien enthusiasts were persistent about it being real, which made the footage go viral. Ocean dome. While fishing offshore, a group of fishermen spotted something unusual, hovering just above the water. The craft had a smooth, dome-like shape with a metallic surface that reflected the daylight. It remained just above the waves without touching the ocean at all. At first, the extraterrestrial-looking vehicle held its position, almost as if it was observing the water below. After a short moment, it began gliding calmly across the open sea. There were no flashing lights or visible engines anywhere on the surface. The fishermen kept filming, while the strange craft continued its steady path above the water. Formation over ocean. While riding a jet ski near the coast in the evening, a man recorded several lights appearing over the water. The objects were arranged in a loose group and moved toward the city skyline. Each light maintained equal distance from the others. They traveled at a steady speed without breaking formation.
We're either being surrounded by friggin' UFOs.
The sky was slightly hazy, softening their outlines but not hiding them. None of the objects changed direction or altitude sharply. The group continued forward together until nearby buildings and shoreline structures partially blocked the view.
5, 1, 10, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13.
Mysterious object. Early in the morning, a group of fishermen were out on a large boat when one of them pointed toward the water ahead. Standing just above the surface was a tall object, shaped like a long airship. It was completely vertical and stayed in one place, while the water moved around it. One of the men started filming as the boat slowed down. The object looked smooth and solid, almost like a large craft placed upright in the air. It stayed there quietly for several seconds. The fishermen kept their distance while recording the strange sight floating above the water. Remote island object. While staying at a remote island resort, a man noticed a glowing object moving above the ocean at night. He was standing near the shoreline when he pointed his phone toward the sky. The object appeared as a single bright light, traveling steadily from one side of the horizon to the other. It did not flash or break into smaller lights. Its speed remained constant as it crossed above the water. Rising from water. In May 2021, scientists flying over the Southern Ocean observed something rising from beneath the surface. A metallic, saucer-shaped object emerged vertically from the water. The surface appeared smooth and evenly curved. Once fully above the waves, it paused briefly in midair. It then shifted into a horizontal position and began moving away at a steady speed. The water below settled quickly after it lifted out. The object maintained a straight path over open ocean, increasing its distance from the helicopter as it continued across the area. Jet chase. A fishing boat off the coast of Galicia, Spain, was recording the sky when a fast-moving object crossed the frame. The shape looked round and metallic while traveling across the open sky. 2 fighter jets could be seen flying behind it at a distance. The camera followed the movement as the object stayed ahead of the aircraft. Within seconds, it changed direction and moved downward toward the ocean. The camera stayed focused as the craft submerged in the water. A small splash formed on the surface. The jets continued flying overhead while the sea quickly returned to normal moving waves. Jet pursuit workers on an offshore oil platform filmed something strange in the daytime sky. 2 dark saucer-shaped objects were moving over the ocean.
Yo, what is this, bro? What is this?
Not far behind them, 2 F-22 fighter jets were following along the same path. The objects stayed ahead of the jets while moving steadily across the open sky. No visible smoke or engines could be seen on the saucers. Both the fighter aircraft and the unidentified objects continued across the sky for several seconds until they moved farther away from the view of the oil platform workers.
Like, what is this? Yo, I've never seen this shit.
Ocean orbs. In July 2025, several glowing lights were recorded above the ocean off the coast of South Africa. The lights appeared high in the sky and were spaced apart while traveling together in the same direction. None of them blinked like airplane lights normally do. Each one stayed steady and evenly bright while moving across the night sky. The formation remained organized the entire time, almost as if the glowing crafts were flying together in a coordinated path. Atlantic giant crew members on this naval ship recorded a surprising moment in the Atlantic Ocean. The water in front of the vessel began rising slightly, and a massive structure slowly came out of the sea. A huge metallic craft lifted above the surface, while streams of water poured off its sides. The object looked wide and solid, almost like an enormous hidden alien spaceship coming out of the ocean. The craft then continued moving into the sky, while water fell from it like rain back into the sea. Jersey hovered. Drivers along a road in New Jersey began slowing down after noticing something unusual above the highway. A smooth, disc-shaped craft hovered silently in the sky, holding a steady position directly above the area.
Yo, look at that.
From below, it looked like a classic flying saucer with a rounded surface and no visible wings. Several people pulled their cars to the side and stepped out to record. The craft stayed suspended in the same spot for a short time, without tilting or rotating like normal aircraft would. After a few moments, it began gliding forward slowly, staying at the same height while quietly crossing the sky.
Se mueve de ahí.
Shallow water figure. A man filming his children in the shallow water at Bondi Beach noticed something unusual. A short distance away, the water was clear enough to see the sand below. Moving upright beneath the surface was a small figure walking on two legs. Its body looked thin, and its head appeared larger than normal. It moved steadily across the sandy bottom without splashing. The man shifted his phone toward it and kept recording. The figure continued for a few seconds, then changed direction and walked toward slightly deeper water. The visibility faded, and it was no longer clear. Orbs over lake. Late at night, near a lake inside a national park, 3 bright orbs appeared above the water. They were lined up in a straight row with equal space between them. The lights stayed steady and did not flicker. They hovered for a short time, then began moving together across the lake at the same speed. Their reflections were faintly visible on the surface below. The formations stayed aligned as they shifted slightly higher in the sky and slowly vanished. Orb over beach. Near a beachside bar late at night, a huge orange sphere was visible above the ocean. A thick cloud sat directly above it. The orb stayed bright and round, holding its position below the cloud layer. It moved slightly up and down within a small range, but did not travel across the sky. The color remained consistent, and its outline stayed clearly defined. The ocean below reflected a soft orange glow. Then its glow started fading, until the object could barely be seen. Shore activity. Residents living along the beachfront in Playa Grande noticed a strange glow in the ocean late at night. One of them began recording while pointing the camera toward the water. The light stayed in the same spot near the shore and did not move with the waves. The residents got curious about it, and the same area was checked again the next day. Even in daylight, the glow could still be seen under the surface in the exact same location, shining faintly through the water near the beach. Navy water entry. Early one morning, a U.S. Navy patrol vessel recorded unusual radar activity over open water. Cameras then captured a dark, triangular, saucer-shaped object hovering just above the ocean surface. The craft remained nearly still for several seconds. Its outline looked smooth and evenly shaped. After holding position, the object slowly lowered until it touched the water and slipped beneath the surface.
What was splashed?
Naval personnel later entered the water to examine the location. No debris, bubbles, or visible disturbance was found in the area, and the exact source of the object was not identified. Ocean whirlpool. Workers near offshore oil rigs recorded a strange sight on the water one afternoon. A large circle began forming on the ocean surface, and the water started spinning slowly. Waves curved toward the center as the swirl grew wider. The rigs and nearby boats stayed still while the spinning motion continued. The middle of the circle looked darker than the rest of the sea. Experts said the shape looked unusual, almost like something hidden under the water causing the motion. What's your take on this one? Tell me in the comments below. Underwater sphere. 2 spearfishers filming underwater captured something unusual moving through the ocean beside them. A small metallic sphere suddenly rushed across the camera's view at incredible speed. The object looked smooth and perfectly round, almost like a compact alien craft built for underwater travel. As the divers continued recording, the sphere changed direction several times, with quick, sharp turns that seemed almost too fast for something mechanical. Bubbles from the divers drifted upward, while the strange sphere kept darting through the water. For a few seconds, the camera attempted to follow its movement before the small craft blended into the darker water below. Cruise ship light passengers on a cruise ship noticed a strange glow in the water beside the vessel one evening. Someone pointed a phone camera over the rail and recorded a bright blue shape just under the surface. The glowing object moved slowly through the water next to the ship. It stayed close enough that the light could be seen clearly through the moving waves. The shape looked round and smooth, almost like an underwater alien craft with a soft glow around it. It stayed beside the vessel for a short time, while people continued filming from above. Harbor lights. Late at night in Bristol Harbor, someone recorded a glowing form floating near the surface of the water. The shape had long, thin arms that moved gently around it. Soft colors shifted across its body, changing between pale blue, green, and purple. The glowing figure stayed close to the top of the harbor water. Reflections from nearby buildings moved across the surface around it. The object looked almost like a strange sea creature with lights along its body. It slowly moved across the dock area for several seconds before going farther into the darker part of the harbor where the camera could no longer see it. Trench wreck. During a deep dive in the Mariana Trench, divers recorded something unusual on the ocean floor. Their lights revealed a large, disc-shaped object resting on the sand. The structure looked old and partly buried. Its surface appeared rough and worn after spending a long time underwater. Under that disc, remains of a alienoid figure were lying across the seafloor. Marine growth covered parts of both the figures and the craft. The divers slowly moved their cameras around the area to capture the full shape of the alleged underwater spaceship. Later, the coordinates of the location were shared with authorities for further investigation. Swedish sea sphere. People on a boat near the coast of Sweden noticed something moving in the water behind them. A round object could be seen under the surface, following along near the boat. The sphere looked smooth and evenly shaped as it moved through the clear water. Nearby buoys shifted slightly as the object passed under them. The round shape kept the same depth while moving beside the vessel. The camera followed it for several seconds as it changed direction gently in the sea. Bridge discovery. A man standing on a bridge in Barcelona was taking photos of the water when he noticed a large object below. The camera zoomed in and showed what looked like a circular metal structure resting on the bottom.
As I can see, it's a sphere.
Parts of the object were covered with sand and rust. The round outline looked similar to an old flying saucer, partly buried underwater. The aliens' light from the surface reflected across the curved edges of the structure. The camera continued recording the sight from above, showing the full round shape lying quietly under the water.
Time is, I don't even know, I can't see the time, I think it's about 6:30 p.m.
Deep flash. A research team was exploring deep water near Sanriku, Japan, using a remote-operated underwater robot. The camera was focused on sea life moving along the ocean floor. While the robot hovered in place, a bright object suddenly crossed the background. It looked like a glowing streak moving quickly through the dark water. The light passed behind the robot camera in a straight line. Its movement lasted only a moment before it vanished into the darkness of the deep sea. The robot continued recording the empty water, where the glowing object had just moved, while small particles floated slowly in the light. Ocean dive. A man standing on a cliff overlooking the ocean was filming the wide view of the water below. While recording, a bright object appeared in the sky, moving quickly across the frame. The camera zoomed in as the round shape crossed above the open water. The object looked smooth and reflective in the sunlight. Within seconds, it tilted downward and headed straight toward the sea. The camera followed the movement as the object entered the water at high speed. A huge splash formed where it went in. The surface waves spread out briefly before returning to their normal seafloor base. A scuba diver, exploring deep water, was moving slowly along the seabed with a camera light. The beam revealed a large structure resting on the ocean floor. The shape looked wide and solid, almost like a futuristic building placed underwater. Dim lights could be seen along parts of the structure's surface. One side showed an opening that looked similar to an entrance. The diver moved closer while the camera recorded the details of the craft. The structure stayed completely still while fish passed nearby. The camera light moved across the outer surface before the diver slowly backed away and continued along the seabed. Rusted saucer. A scuba diver recording the seabed noticed a wide, circular shape resting on the ocean floor. As the camera moved closer, the futuristic object looked similar to a large saucer. The outer surface appeared rusted and worn after a long time underwater. The center section looked hollow, with no visible equipment inside. Small fish were swimming through the open area of the object. The diver slowly moved around it while recording the full outline of the shape. The saucer remained partly buried in the seabed while the camera light passed across its surface. Black sphere passengers on a small boat near Atlantic Beach, North Carolina, noticed a dark object floating on the water. The shape looked huge and had a smooth surface, almost like a giant black egg resting on the surface. The boat slowed down while someone started recording with a phone. The object stayed still while small waves moved around it. No ropes or boats were attached to the shape. The camera zoomed in to show its curved surface, reflecting light from the sky. The object remained floating quietly with the ocean on all sides. Sea anomaly divers from the Ocean X team were exploring the bottom of the Baltic Sea when their sonar revealed a strange circular formation. When they reached the site, the camera showed a wide, disc-shaped structure resting on the seabed. The object looked flat across the top with raised edges around the sides. Parts of the surface were covered with sand and marine growth. The divers slowly moved around it while recording the full outline. The formation stood out clearly against the surrounding seabed. Their lights swept across the surface, while the camera documented the full shape of the mysterious structure. Deep City. During a deep ocean dive, a group of divers recorded a large area of unusual structures on the seabed. Several tall shapes stood close together, looking similar to buildings. Nearby, round craft-shaped objects were resting across the ocean floor. Lights from the divers' cameras moved across the structures, while fish swam through the open spaces between them. The divers slowly passed above the area while filming everything below. Some alienoid figures could also be seen moving through the water at a distance from the structures. The camera stayed focused on the wide view of the site before the divers continued forward. Strange figures. A group of tourists on a remote island came across something unusual in an open, grassy area near the water. One strange figure was lying flat on the ground without moving. A second figure stood a few steps away, slowly turning its head and body as if looking around the area. The standing one looked very confused, as if it had just crashed there and knew nothing about the planet. The visitors filmed from a distance as the scene continued for several moments. The two figures looked very thin and different from anyone nearby. The short clip shows both figures clearly present there before the camera recording finally stops. Lights over beach. One night, in João Pessoa, Brazil, a man stepped onto the balcony of his apartment that overlooked the beach. While looking out at the ocean, he noticed several bright lights moving together in the sky above the ocean. The lights stayed in a loose group and shined narrow beams down toward the sea. He began recording as the object slowly moved across the night sky. The beams moved along the surface of the water, while the glowing UFOs stayed high above. For several seconds, the group continued across the dark sky near the shoreline. The clip ends while the lights are still moving quietly over the ocean. Fast-moving orbs. A man had just parked his car near a shoreline when he noticed several glowing lights moving quickly across the sky. They were small, bright orbs changing direction at high speed. He pulled out his phone and started filming as the lights crossed paths and circled around each other. Some moved straight while others quickly changed course in the air. The movement lasted several seconds while the camera followed the glowing shapes. The lights kept shifting positions across the dark sky before spreading farther apart above the area where the video was being recorded. Mysterious phenomenon. Late at night, near a large lake, several people looked up after noticing a long line of lights moving across the sky. The lights were arranged in a loose group and moved together in the same direction. Someone started filming while the line continued across the sky, above the water and nearby city lights. The objects kept the same steady movement as they passed over the lake area. Many wondered if it was another strange phenomenon caused by the recent UFO sightings around the area.
Oh my god.
Pale figure sighting. Late at night in Key Largo, Florida, a man walking along the beach noticed something sitting on a large rock close to the water. At first it looked like a person.
What is that?
But the shape appeared unusually thin and pale under the dim light. He began recording while staying several steps away and quietly wondered if it could be an alien. The figure stayed crouched on the rock, facing the ocean as small waves reached the shore nearby. The man kept filming for a few seconds before the clip ended, leaving the strange figure still sitting there by the water.
Dude, what is that?
Strange being. During a casual volleyball game on a sunny Miami beach, one of the players walked over to pick up the ball when he noticed something unusual lying in the sand. He called the others, and someone quickly started filming. The shape looked like a small body, partly covered with sand. What stood out the most were the feet, which had long, narrow toes and sharp-looking nails.
And this is right here. Looks like a furry tail, but look at the claws and the nails, and then the face.
The camera moved closer, while the object stayed still near the waterline. Some people later connected the sight to reports of a UFO landing that had been seen on the same beach a few weeks earlier. Bizarre UFO. A tourist walking along the beach noticed a strange-shaped object resting on the sand. It had sharp, angled sides and looked different from the shells and rocks around it. He took out his phone and started recording while hiding behind a rock formation. The object stayed still for a moment. Then it slowly lifted off the sand and rose straight up into the sky. The man kept filming as the craft hovered above the beach for a brief moment and then vanished.